It's just, it doesn't matter. Like, whatever the trending is on Twitter, it's bad. I have that weird habit of, like, if I'm on my personal computer after work, like, Twitter is one of those tabs I just kind of leave open. And so I'll, like, pop over every now and then and be like, what's trending? It's always a mistake. I've never once been glad that I looked at it.
That's fair. I don't think I have either, to be honest. But I don't really look at the trending tab that often, I feel like.
Yeah, like the notifications tab, hey, that's not too bad. It's just mainly people engaging with the show and with the channel and like our content and stuff. So that's good.
Yeah.
But you pop over to like whatever the broader Twitter sphere is talking about, and it's just either completely inane or once again, people are outraged over something. Like it's just
a nightmare.
Pick a topic, they're mad about it.
Yeah. Speaking of a topic to get mad about, I'm on my old mic today. Yay.
The old mic still has life. It's back.
He does. The wire actually broke. So this is a wire I scrapped from something else. I don't even remember what this wire's from. But yeah, Michael had to use the computer room for his own personal work thing. And I'm like, yeah, that's more important. Our financial benefit is definitely more important than the podcast. I'll take the laptop and the old mic and go in the bedroom. So,
yeah.
Which we also like. We moved furniture out of the room because we're getting like baby stuff in, but like right now it's really empty, so there's probably like an echo. So it's gonna be some great audio you're gonna get right now on my end.
It'll be fine. How old is the old mic anyway? I'm curious about that. What constitutes old mic?
Well, it's the one I started the channel using, so like that quality of mic. But I've actually had it longer than that. It's probably got it in like 2015, maybe.
Okay, that's old enough, yeah.
Yeah, he's old. It's a Nessie Blue, or Blue Nessie, I don't know. But as I turn it around and turn it away from my voice, it'll be like a weird effect on that.
The Nessie, like a blue Yeti or a Nessie? What's a Nessie?
So it's the Blue Yeti, except it's smaller and has like a weird neck to it. So they call it like after the Loch Ness Monster, the Nessie.
Oh, how interesting. Okay.
It's kind of cute.
that sounds actually helpful because I have an old Blue Yeti, which is probably about as old as your mic, to be honest, and it's been going quite well for a while.
Yeah. Anyway, so Jordan, because this is something that you just finished as of an hour ago. What are we talking about today?
We are talking about Dragon Age comics, which is something that we have sort of been toying with, talking about for a long time. You're very well versed on them. You've made videos on them. Everyone knows this already. But I've never read Dragon Age comics ever. And so it was one of those things where I'm a comics fan generally. I don't read nearly as much as I used to, but I love comics. I think it's a great medium. I think it's a great art form, and I just never have gotten into them. And so now I have read all of the not all of, but what is commonly referred to as the Darkhorse comics.
Yeah, which I that's a whole other. Let's. It's either now or later. Let's take like 10 minutes to come up with a new group name for these because it's driving me nuts. So it's the there's a trio of comics, the Silent Grove, Those Who Speak, and Until We Sleep. I always get the S's mixed up. But they're all written by David Gator and Alexander Freed, I think.
Yes.
And then there's the newer Dark Horse comics, which is Mage Killer, Knight Errant, Deception, and now Blue Wraith, which most of that is Nunzio de Philippus and oh my god, I forgot the woman's name, but her last name is Weir. I feel really bad now. Christina Weir, there we go. And I forgot who wrote Mage Killer, to be quite honest. So that one. But they're also published by Darkhorse. So people, we generally when you read online and they say the Darkhorse comics, they usually mean the Gator ones.
Right.
But now the new ones are coming out, so I don't know. At this rate, there's actually more new Dark Horse than old Dark Horse. So,
is it appropriate to just call it the Silent Grove trilogy? Because it all kind of stems, at least, from that as the basis of it.
I think that works. It's just I don't know. I wish there was. I don't know. I just wish there was a name that like wasn't the title of the comics because I always got them confused. Like I see even till now I have to think for a minute and be like, okay, there's each one has an S, but I can't remember what the order in which S is. Like I always say like Until We Speak and like Those Who Sleep and like that kind of bullshit. Yes. I do it all the time.
The Silent Speak Sleepers.
Yes, that's actually the very end of my video. Like, can we just call this the Silent Speak Sleep? So maybe that's just it. The Silent Speak Sleep.
That'll be that'll be what we call it.
Yeah.
Also, I always am a stickler for this. Drawn by Mr. Chad Harden. I always like to include the artist.
No, that's fair. I just really bad with names, and I don't remember.
And it's also been years since you saw. So
yeah, really. I do. Now I do have the hard. I actually have a physical copy of this. It's the only comic I have a physical copy of because I got the library edition. So fun. I could have just flipped the damn thing open and oh, Chad Harwin. So that's just me being an asshole. Which side note, does a great job.
It's good art. I enjoyed the art. That I'll sort of reserve my sort of nerdy comic book technical review for the end, and then we can talk more about the story. But I do have a few thoughts, as I always do, about how is this as a comic besides just how is it as a Dragon Age thing.
See, I really don't know much about comics. I read my fair share of manga, mostly Sailor Moon, back when I was a kid.
Oh yeah.
But really, the Dragon Age ones were my first foray into American comics, if you will.
Yeah.
So I really have nothing to compare this to. So yes, please enlighten us about the other superhero comics.
That's pretty good. That's actually not bad. If it's you read these first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, these are actually. So I mean, I guess we should just jump into it, right? Because
let's go.
I quite like them, and I mean, it might be one of those things where when I give it a little more time, I might kind of come down because I literally within the hour just finished Until We Sleep.
Mm-hmm.
I might even say that I fucking love these. I mean, I thought they were really, really good. I thoroughly enjoyed the story of them. I would say by the end of issue 2 or part 2 of The Silent Grove, I was like, oh shit. We are into some real ass shit right now when he sort of gets into the prison and he says King Merrick. And I'm like, oh damn, okay, we're doing real shit.
Mm-hmm.
We talked a little bit on the last live stream on Codex Added about my complaints with the sort of current, at least as we're recording this, the current Kylo Ren prequel spin-off comic thing in Star Wars, about how, and you've even mentioned this with Mage Killer, I think, how certain comics that are spun off from a major property, maybe it's because they don't want to mess with their canon or they want to save the big punches for whatever it is, the games or the movies or what have you. They don't really do anything big plot wise.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like from the second issue we were like, oh shit, this is really going somewhere that's really quite meaningful. And I thought that overall it's some of my favorite Isabela stuff. It's some of my favorite Varric stuff. It's some of my favorite Alistair stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, this is prime shit. This is not a side story to me. This is a story that now I put up there with the fucking trilogy of Dragon Age games as far as I'm concerned. I love the story.
Oh yeah, and this is the ending of Merrick's saga, if you will. If you want to complete Merrick's saga, you got to read Stolen Throne, The Calling, and then this series. All of it, because this really is just about finding Merrick and his fate.
Oh my God, you're so right. That's a whole nother level to it, which is I haven't read all the Dragon Age novels, but I have read Stolen Throne and I have read The Calling.
Oh, okay, good. I was about to say if you haven't read those two, fuck man.
that's the thing. Oh my God, that's a whole angle in and of itself. The completion of Merrick's story, but it's also it's the completion of his story through Alistair, which I fucking love. It's such a quintessential sort of archetypal story for Alistair. I mean, he literally, because that's essentially, I know the Fade is not really the underworld or the afterlife, but close enough as far as the Dragon Age lore is concerned, right? Yeah. It's the ultimate classical allegorical trope of the son traveling to the underworld to find his dead father and redeem the memory, the flaws of his father, sort of overcoming those. I love shit like that. And the fact that Gator could execute on that old of a story, but also keep it kind of fresh and within the Dragon Age universe, I fucking dug it a lot.
And then also dig into the psyche of Isabela and then how Varric thinks and why he does all this weird shit with the story angle and just explaining that into a bigger detail. You really get to kind of know these three characters in a much more intimate way than I think you're allowed to in some of the games, even with the romances, especially Isabela.
Isabela for sure, but I love what you mentioned about Varric and sort of why he does what he does with the storytelling, because that is a great example, and I'm so glad you mentioned it. It's a great example of the advantage of the medium. You could not get to know Varric in quite this way in any other medium except through comics. You could kind of do it with a voiceover in a movie or kind of in a game, but there's something about the internal monologue mixed with a visual. It's not like a first-person novel, and it's not, for some reason, even though it's almost exactly the same thing as a voiceover in a movie or a game, it's not the same. When he's narrating, like, sort of how he sort of casts himself as a more noble hero, and then, I can't remember the exact line, but it's something like, oh, you didn't think that I would do it that way? And then he kind of explains, sort of, like you said, sort of like why he casts certain stories in a certain light. I think that's one of those things that you can do uniquely only in comics, and so I dug that so much.
Do real quick, it just says our content. Do we want to like give a quick little like story summary, or should we just kind of just if you haven't read this, you're fucked, and we're just gonna go off about cool parts on it?
I mean, it is. I mean, so first of all, we've already spoiled stuff, so we were kind of past the spoiler warning.
Oh yeah,
but we'll put it everywhere in the description, etc. I mean, obviously, we're gonna spoil the fuck out of this thing. I mean, I think people should definitely read it before they listen to this. I mean, the best way that I would summarize is just from a high level to say that, like, Alistair has gotten a tip as to the fact that perhaps his father, King Varric, is still alive, and he's trying to find him, and he sort of starts off, they start off in Antiva, yeah. And he's sort of tracking down, like, he had a tip from one of the crows.
Zevran specifically.
Well, Zevran, and then there's the other guy that ends up double-crossing them, right? So he's trying to track down a lead on finding his father, and it leads them all from Antiva to Vinter, etc. And I would say that that's enough for people to kind of follow along if they really haven't read it. But I would highly recommend people go read it before listening.
Well, I don't know. It kind of also takes some weird, because like then you go meet Morrigan's sister.
Oh, that's right.
And then we go have a ball into Vinter. Yeah, and then we go to a prison. Actually, I think the prison's before.
There's two prisons. That's
okay. That's right. It's two prisons. And then you meet Sten, which is also great Sten content.
Oh my god, there's so. I just read it and I already forgot shit.
Yeah, I think the Sten thing, because like I didn't know Sten was going to be the Arishok when I was reading this, and I was like, Sten.
Also,
what are you doing here?
Just from like a great fucking like fandom, comic booky bullshit sense. Fucking Alistair fights Sten.
Yeah.
Like, holy shit, they have a fight. And that is such a great, like, it fits in any fandom. Like, you know, Dragon Age fans go nuts over that, but also it's such a comic booky thing to do, to be like, take this heavy hitter from what you already know and this heavy hitter from the universe and make them fight, even though they're friends.
Well, like, friends is a little much for Sten, but
comrades at least, yeah.
Yeah, he respects him enough not to put him in prison. That's
he's Balasit. What is it again? Balasit.
Balasidon.
Yeah. That's a great fight scene, by the way, which is really cool, and in the way that it's juxtaposed with Isabela's fight with the Tamasaran. There you go. Yeah. So there is a lot that happens. You're right. There's a ton that happens. And then we could jump around. I don't know if we go necessarily beat by beat.
So I will say, like, my video series that goes beat by beat and then also goes into like a little bit of like fun facts is like an hour 30 minutes. So I don't know if we actually have that time, because I feel like there's more we could just talk about rather than just doing the beat by beat. I think it's like if we want to talk about something, we should give a quick overview on like the context of how it fits into the rest of the story.
Yeah, because it's three arcs where Silent Grove is 6 chapters or 6 issues, and then those who speak is 3, and Until We Sleep is 3, and so it's a lot of content. I agree. Going beat by beat would be a little bit off, but all right. So I mean, like, one thing that you kind of touched on already, and we both did, is Isabela.
Yeah.
Right? Like, Isabela is so good in this stuff. I said it's some of my favorite Isabela content, but, like, I mean, it might be my favorite Isabela stuff, to be quite honest. Like, I love, you know, the romance, and also, like, the parts where she plays big in the Dragon Age 2 plot. She plays big. I mean, she's central to the second act of Dragon Age 2 in the Qunari. But her backstory, although it's definitely touched upon, it feels like, well, I mean, they explain it, her backstory, completely, pretty much. In Dragon Age 2, but for some reason, this feels more like it feels like she's moving a bit as a character. She's growing a little bit in her own reflections on her backstory, and for that reason, I think I might have liked Isabela as much or more in this than ever I did in Dragon Age 2, and I already liked her as a character.
I definitely liked her more in this than in Dragon Age 2, just because, like she's fun in Dragon Age 2, but, like, I feel like there's not a lot of emotional growth there. Like, I think unless you're a romancer, and, like, in my canon, you don't. So, it's just, like, the most you get out of Isabela is, like, I came back for you, and it was stupid, but I'm glad you're my friend. And then she just kind of, like, weirdly shy about it, and that's the end of it. Where here, you get a lot more, like, backstory on, like, why does she think the things she thinks? Why does she do the things she does?
Yeah.
And then just also being questioned and have her faith shaken by one of her biggest enemies, the Tamathran from the Qunari. And then her really saying, like, okay, I know I don't want to be a Qunari. I know I shouldn't be that. But that doesn't necessarily mean all those things that women said were necessarily false. And at the end of that, she really questions who she is. And I think it's kind of symbolized that. So I guess for those who haven't read the comic and don't know, Isabela's not Isabela's real name. It's, I think it's Naisha or Naishi or something like that.
Yeah,
Naishi.
I think so.
I don't know how to pronounce it, but that's her real name. And she chose Isabela for herself. And so at the kind of like after the second one at the start of Until We Sleep, no one really calls her Isabela. They just say captain or something like that. At the end of it, they just kind of say, like, well, Isabela, who is she going to be now? We don't know. And, like, the spoiler is in Inquisition, she's Isabela again. But no, she's Admiral Isabela. So, like, I don't know how... I kind of wish, like, there was a... I get why they kept the name Isabela, but that was, like, such a good story hook. And then she kept Isabela. That was like, I'm torn on how I feel about that.
Yeah, no, the name thing was very interesting. The whole process of that interrogation of the Qunari wanting to start breaking her, right? Like mentally down, and then starts by asking her name. And I mean, it's a traumatic subject matter to try and delve into, and I don't mean to make the comparison 1-to-1, but, like, there's this really sort of, like, heart-wrenching scene in the movie 12 Years a Slave, which is based on a true story where this guy had been captured and was going to be put into slavery, and this is apparently historical, where, like, one of the first things they would do is get the person to not say their name, right? Like, they ask you your name and you're supposed to say the name that they gave you as a way of sort of, like, tearing you away from your identity as a part of, like, putting you into slavery. It's an absolutely heart-wrenching scene to watch. Obviously, I know it's not a 1-to-1 thing here, but it evoked that type of thing, right? Like, a name is a really powerful thing. And so this Qunari is really trying to get under her skin by going after that. I thought that was a brilliant device. And there was a great line of dialogue that I don't remember exactly, where the Tamathran is saying, Isabela has a line of saying, like, you don't even have names, like, why do you care? And she responds with something like, we have names, like, what you call something is very important, so, like, tell the truth. And I was like, holy shit, that's so good.
Yeah, because, like, in the Qunari, their names are just their role. Their name really is what essentially they are in society.
Yes.
So, you know, it would be like, you know, me being internet personality mom lady, and that's my name. So,
or Ghildirthalen, right? Like, that's a name you chose. Yeah. You know what I mean?
I guess, yeah. So
yeah, I mean, Isabela overall, right? Like, I thought that so let's take a very specific example, right? Like, in Dragon Age 2, she references the fact, and it's not just a reference, right? The reason why she took the job to steal the Tome of Kuzlan is because of because a job went bad where she was moving human cargo slaves, right? And so in Dragon Age 2, she references the fact that, like, I won't do that anymore, which is good enough as it is. But the way that I always remember that moment was sort of like, oh, okay, Isabela's a good pirate, and that's fine, but it felt a little bit surface level to just be like, well, she's edgy and bad, but she's not that bad. Whereas in this storyline, we see why that's her rule. Yeah. Right? Like, why she does not do that. And that scene is so powerful when she's recounting this as a part of the interrogation of why she doesn't take why she never traffics in slaves anymore. And I guess for people that haven't read it, she was her crew and her ship was trafficking in slaves, and it was it the Orlesians, or who was it that was coming up on them?
I think it was the Orlesians, which have a rule of you're a slave or you're going to get hanged.
Yes. And so Isabella's like, look, I'm sorry, but I'm not gonna die for these people. And so they throw the slaves overboard in chains and kill all of them.
Men, women, children, all overboard.
Everybody. And it's just the way it's drawn is powerful and haunting. And it's the reason why I like that so much is that it's one thing to cast a character as sort of being above reproach, right? Like, I wouldn't deal in slaves because that's just not a thing you do. That's fine, but it's way deeper. And the foundation of that morality within your story takes on a much greater meaning when you frame it in the context of, this is a character who has done evil things. They don't just shrug off evil or say, oh, well, you shouldn't be bad. It's like, she did something for her own personal gain because she was backed into a corner, right? She wasn't going to die for other people. And so from her perspective, it's like, yeah, it was evil, but I had to do it. So now she sort of conducts herself, or she has rules set up in her life to be like, I can't do that because what if I'm put in that position again? I just think I think it deepens the morality a lot to say she's not a good pirate. She's a incredibly flawed human being who, when put into a bad situation, sort of lived out the worst part of herself, right? The part of herself that is, she just wants to survive, but she went to a horrible length to cover her own ass. And now that she knows that she's capable of that, she won't ever put herself in that position again. I think that's brilliant character writing, like first-class character writing.
As a quick side note, there's actually an alternate cover that didn't get put out. You can find it online, and I think it's also in the library edition I have. And it's a wonderful cover kind of depicting just Isabella's torment of like being tortured, and then also just like these figures being drawn into the depths of covered in change. It's very haunting. I made it the icon of the video, so I just loved it so much because it was so nice. But
oh dang, I did not know that, but that is awesome and terrible. So yeah, no, just her whole arc throughout it, but especially in Those Who Speak, I thought it was really peak Isabela material that I was so glad that we got to see.
Yeah, I think I didn't really care for Isabela, I think, until this her arc here, just because like she was just kind of like funny and hedonistic in the games and like did a little bit of that, but then like I think this really, as you said, it actually created some depth to her. She has some morality to her, and now I kind of get why she does the things she does, and it really breathes some life into her that I actually think she needed. And I kind of wish Sumas did something like this for Meryl, because I just don't like Meryl so much. Just let me like Meryl, because everyone else can stop bitching about it to me now.
Yeah. No, also the other moment that I loved with Isabela is when she goes back for her crew.
Yeah. I also like the fact, so when she goes back to her crew, she also says like, look, I want you guys to come with me because I want you to choose between having this life and the life you could have had otherwise. But I don't want to force you guys into this because it is going to be hard and you might die getting out here. Like, she gives them the choice of going with the Qun or going with her. And they all say, nope, we're here. Come, we're going with you.
Yeah, like
I
good pirates. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And I mean, that made it all the more incredible. It wasn't like, I'm going to go risk my life and definitely get these people out. I'm going to go risk my own life just to make sure they deserve that choice. Mm-hmm. So that they can, I loved it. And I thought that it made her, it really feels like, even just within these 3 comic series, that she evolves as a leader, so that at the end of it, when she's like the captain, you really feel like she earned that by evolving as a character. I dug it a lot.
Yeah, I think she really also shines in the, like, because in the games, you never really see her as a captain. She just says she is. But when you actually see her in the captain role, you're like, okay, I get it. You are a captain.
Right.
Yeah, it's one of those show don't tell things. We finally get to see her as one. I think another moment of her, because this is kind of going into the Fade, but like everyone, so they all get sucked into the Fade because of story, and Isabela, like they all have really nice dreams, except for Isabela seems to have like this nightmare where she's suddenly a Canary, and she's attacking in a village and attacking them, and I don't know, I guess like they all have so nice dreams, why did Isabela have a bad one? But I wonder, like, she was in turmoil during this time. She didn't know what it is. I almost wonder if this was a dream, like not a nightmare for her, because she had certainty in that moment, which is something she currently lacked. So it was a comfortable thing having certainty in the Qun.
Yeah, there's even the line of dialogue where she says it would be easier.
Mm-hmm. And then I think, is it Varric or May who brings her back saying like, yeah, but you didn't choose it or something. I forget what they tell her.
Yeah, I think it was Varric.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, that's a great point, right? Like it adds that other layer of complexity to Isabela where the Fade is sort of showing her desires, which just kind of shows you there is a part of her that wanted that sort of clarity in her life.
Mm-hmm. And like, I think because like you find out like her mother had joined the Qun, and that's why she was sold off into technically sexual slavery and like all sorts of things. And she just wonders if she had just joined the Qun, how much easier would her life have been? And that's always been a big what if for her.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, her relationship with her mother gets deepened. Everything about Isabela is really enhanced, and it doesn't like you're right. I liked Isabela in the sense that she was fun in Dragon Age 2, but now I feel like I can look at that Dragon Age 2 content with way more depth now that they expanded her character out in this, which is really nice.
Mm-hmm. Also, this is, I think, the coolest fact of the whole comic. So this is from the library edition. I'm just going to read it out. So this is by, let me pull it up closer. This is said by David Gator, and it's about the scene when Isabela shows herself in the Canary form in the Fade. This scene was actually inspired by a fan named Allegra who did a cosplay of a Canary version of Isabela. Now, that's really, so it's really cool that a fan was able to, I guess, cosplay so good that it actually made it into the comics. What's cooler is that Allegra is Allegra Clark, who would later go on to voice Josephine.
Oh, that's phenomenal.
I know. That's why if you ever want to be the ultimate Dragon Age fan, it's already been taken. Allegra Clark took it long ago. So none of us can beat Allegra Clark.
That's funny you say that, because literally, I swear to God, I thought you were going to say if you want to be the ultimate Dragon Age fan, too late, because it's already Ghildirthalen, because I knew that.
No, it can't be me anymore. I have never done anything that changed the series. Allegra Clark did it twice.
That's awesome. Yeah, what a great piece of trivia that is.
Yeah, I just love it, because like when I was reading, because this was, I think, published before Inquisition came out. So when I was reading that Allegra, I'm like, Allegra, it wouldn't be fucking Allegra Clark, would it? So I Google it, and sure enough, I found a picture of her all dressed up. Her cosplay was a little bit different, but like when you compare the two, you're like, yeah, the artist basically just took that and like took off her bandana and like added some shoulder pads, and that was about it.
It's really close. Okay.
It was really awesome. Close. Like the war paint is pretty much the exact same. But anyway, just fun facts for y'all, and just to heartbreak anyone who wants to be the ultimate Dragon Age fan. Sorry, it's already taken. So.
Oh man, I loved that the 3 series kind of took the 3 main protagonists and cast them as narrators. Mm-hmm. With Alistair and Isabela and Varric. Talking about Varric a little bit, I don't know if it's as monumental as Isabela as far as his content in it, but I liked I liked the sort of dream fake out aspect of it in Until We Sleep, and sort of him waking up as you sort of get like a little glimpse at least of his
but also no, okay.
Well, there's that. Could have done without that slightly, but
says I'm not like a, as you say, a Varric fucker, but there's so many times people post just that image and you're like, all right, that's a butt.
well, I will say this. I liked how he was drawn in the comic, and I don't know, it feels like Varric is just like, he's cool as fuck in the games, to be quite honest, but he's like 25-30% cooler in these comics, right? Or is that just me?
No, I can take. Well, I feel like everyone in this, because I'm thumbing through it to try to find the part you're talking about. I don't know why I'm looking for Varric, but anyway, like everyone is like 25% cooler in the drawing. Like,
yeah, you're Alistair as well, right? Like Alistair looks way like just he looks.
He got some gains, because I always imagined him as kind of like a little, not like super lanky, but like not this fucking ripped. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, no. Also, Varric is very ripped. Everyone's ripped. Everyone just, like, goes to the gym and has 6-packs.
Right. It's very comic booky in the way that they're all drawn. But even just, like, Varric's armor and stuff, like, I really appreciated. He seemed a tad bit cooler when he's going into when he's going into the base or the castle at the beginning of Until We Sleep, like, you know, he's basically infiltrating the place and like taking people out solo, which is really cool. So yeah, I don't know. I dug that about, and also it does feel like there's a moment where he's sort of on the ship with Isabela, and she says something like, "You're really cute when you get paternal," or something like that, and she's kind of chiding him for that, but he also does have kind of like this weird calming influence, or sort of like he's a tad more experienced maybe than Alistair and Isabela.
No, I definitely think that's true. Like, I mean, he basically, like, I've always seen Varric as kind of like the to, I guess, quote Isabela, like the dad friend, like making sure everyone's all right. And Isabela, like, not Isabela 2, Dragon Age 2, like he's make sure that Meryl doesn't get mugged, make sure she can get around the city okay. And like he really takes care of all of his friends and family. Even Bartrand, who tried to have him killed, like he'll make sure he's okay, unless, well, that's kind of a choice Hawke depends. But you know, like he makes sure everyone he cares about is okay in some sense. Like that's just who he is as a character. Whereas, you know, Isabela, you know, even if you're in a romance with her, she goes off for a couple of years and comes back and says, "Hey." Like,
yeah, for sure. Yeah, he is basically sort of like that older, slightly older streetwise friend that you have who can easily get you into a lot of trouble, but he also kind of looks out for you, right? Like that's how I think of Varric, and I think in this sense he is that character a bit as well.
I also, because like Varric is so tight-lipped on his whole backstory that like even, well, minus like him, I think he's very open with Hawke and like him and his brother, because Hawke was roped into like the brother aspect of it. But like Hawke or Varric lies to Hawke about what Bianca is, which that might have been changed in writing. Who knows what that was? But like you get, like, this is the comic where you find out who Bianca is. And I think it's great. I do think in Inquisition, like the Bianca reveal there was not as good as what it is in the comics, where you find out that it was a woman he was in love with who was like I think they were married at this point. I can't remember, to someone very powerful and important. And they really did try to run away together, but it really just didn't work out. And it's like she broke up with him to save both of them. But they still kind of love each other. And like there's this weird on again, off again relationship for it. And so like he wakes up from this dream where they successfully ran away. And he's like, no, this isn't real. I want it to be real, but this isn't reality. I make a whole bunch of stories up, but I know the reality of it. I can't live in a false world because you're not really Bianca. And I think that really speaks to what Varric holds in his heart and what values he has. He likes telling stories. He likes thinking about what could have been, but he's not going to live a lie about it. He's not he's not insane about it. He's not delusional. So
God, that's such a great point about him being a storyteller. That is that's such a great angle on it. That he's, like you said, he loves stories, but he's not delusional. Yeah, that's just. God damn, this book was good. This series was good.
No, it really is. Yeah. I to kind of compare it to like all the other Dragon Age, comics that we've seen so far, minus IDW and Mage Killer, because that's just who gives a shit. But the one thing that this has that the others don't, unfortunately, it has established characters. So because the characters are already established in some sense, you are given the freedom to kind of dig more into the more interesting things of their backstory. But the newer ones also, they don't really do stuff like this. And when they do stuff like this, it's very quick. And sometimes it doesn't always work, like in the case of Olivia in Deception. Where in Deception, I just hated Olivia because I thought she was kind of a bitch. And she made stupid decisions that hurt everybody. And there wasn't like any good explanation for it. Here, Isabela is a bigger bitch than Olivia. But I feel for Isabela because I heard her inner thinkings and why she felt guilt about that, where I didn't see that so much with Olivia. Spoiler, I guess, because I know you haven't read that yet, Jordan. But
oh, she's a major bitch and there's no reason.
Yeah, no, so that's the whole thing. We can talk about that when we get Deception. But and it's weird because like I don't actually think the new ones are bad necessarily. It's just that I think that these just work so much more because her characters we already had. The unfortunately, the new writers just have to go through this unfortunate discovery of like, we have to create new characters and get you to like them and then also tell their story in like 5 issues, and that's a lot.
Yeah.
Like there's only like other than the bad guy, there's only one new character we have here. And, like, we really don't find out that much about her, to be quite honest. Like, there's a fair amount, but, like, she's not a main character. She's just an important side character. And I'm talking about Mayveris.
Right, which, I mean, maybe that's a good segue, right, in Mayveris, because I've heard about this character being sort of popular and well-liked, and I was maybe, like, slightly surprised in that you mentioned, like, she's not in it a ton, so she's in other stuff as well? Or is it just this?
No, it's just this, and then she's in a slide in Trespasser DLC. And that's me. Oh, and some War Table missions, and that's Mayveris.
Interesting. So she's quite popular for not a ton of material, which I liked the character. I mean, she sort of fits as a sort of like extra member of the team that they have, and she's important to the plot and everything. I liked the character, but I was a little surprised of like, oh, this is the great Mayveris, which everyone loves so much, and there wasn't like a ton of material there necessarily. But what was there I thought was good.
I think that I'll be honest, I think Mayveris gets a lot of fanfare because she was the first other than Serendipity that people don't want to talk about, she was the first transgender character in the series that was very successful, Krem being the second. So I think there's a lot of fanfare about that. But like I think were she given more time, I think she would be, I don't want to say more deserving of the fan. Like, I get why people like her. It's just that she just didn't have a lot of screen time in this. If she were in something that she had a lot of screen time, I would get it more. So I guess that's where I'm coming from. But I do like her. I think here's the thing though, she's also kind of shitty in her own right, because like she's definitely pro-slavery.
Well, there's
we all just kind of forget about that part, don't we?
Yeah, well, every character's got to have those flaws, you know.
Yeah, and she's like, slaves, whatever.
Yeah, she is oddly to Vinter in that respect. I mean, you could say something similar about Dorian, who's not exactly pro-slave, but he definitely plays devil's advocate when you talk to him about it. And yet she's willing to sort of go against Magister and sort of like folks who might be considered her countrymen. So, you know, there's some complexity there. I appreciated that.
I think the one thing that made me really like Mayveris' character was fun facts. Mayveris was married to I forgot his name, but it's actually Varric's cousin, and that's how Varric knows Mayveris. And she's really devoted to him. Like, I loved that dream sequence when you see her in the Fade, because if you really look at it, she is surrounded by very handsome, scantily clad men. But none of them touch her except for her husband. None of them.
I see.
The only one she looks at, the only one that she cares about is her husband, who's like giving her shoulder massages and kissing her and being very sweet. And she really does love him. And like everything else is just kind of eye candy. You know, I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, and also I don't know if it was just like the art. Well, it was basically just the art of it, but the panels where she had been sort of beaten up, essentially, right, where she's got like the eye beaten up and stuff like that, but there's this look of determination on her face. I don't know why. I think that endeared me to her slightly more as well. You gotta admire somebody who can take a beating and is still like, let's fucking go, bitches.
Well, that's the whole cause actually I have that page opposite is the David Gator quote that I read. So like that's the reason she comes out of the dream, because she wants to stay there with her deceased husband and her eye candy of slaves. And Varric's like, well, that guy beat you up though. And she's like, right, I gotta slap a bitch. Hold on.
Yes,
and that's why she leaves.
that is a great panel where it's Varric going even after what they did to you, and she's in the same seat as where the like sort of the vision is going on, but it shows her with her clothes torn and bruised and stuff like that, and I'm like, oh shit, she's got to get some payback.
And then they go on with their journey, So I do really like Mayveris, and I am kind of wondering where they're going to take her in Dragon Age 4. Because, like, they did kind of set her up here to, like, kind of share Dorian's view on slavery, where, like, you shouldn't beat your slaves, and you shouldn't kill your slaves, and you should have human decency to your slaves. But, I mean, you could have slaves.
Yeah, she's still pretty comfortable with having slaves.
So, I wonder what's her angle going to be in Dragon Age 4, and if they're going to keep that, or if in between, like, you know, it's been 4 years since this comic, more than that, actually, almost like 6, 7, I think, because this comic happens in between the ending of Dragon Age 2 and before Cassandra picks up Varric. So it's like a weird, like, in the middle there. So it's been like 6 or 7 years since this comic and the beginning of Dragon Age 4, plus whatever time change that we don't know about yet.
Yep.
She could have changed her views. We don't know. I think it would just be a little disappointing to see her change her views without a good explanation for it. So
yeah, no, I would totally agree with that. Man, let me tell you the sign of a great episode. It's like we've been talking about this for 40 minutes, and I feel like we just got started. I don't want to miss talking more about Alistair, because I think Alistair.
yeah.
Again, like, how can you not love Alistair from Dragon Age Origins? I think there's so many great things we've already said about him in that game, but somehow when I read him throughout these 3 series, I'm like, crap, I like him even more. Like, this is again, like, it's one thing to say, like, okay, Isabela, you know, for however much I did like her in Dragon Age 2, I think it's easy to say that her content here surpasses anything in Dragon Age 2.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with Alistair, I think that's a much higher bar, right? Like the Alistair content in Dragon Age Origins is obviously plentiful, and there's so many different, you know, things you could say about him in there. But the one, I guess, the big takeaway that I would say from these series is like this is the content that makes me believe in Alistair as king more than anything else.
Yeah, because he actually, like, does kingly shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
He makes hard decisions. Because, like, I think, unfortunately, with Dragon Age Origins, because you really want the player character to be in control of the time, for the most part, Alistair doesn't really, he's kind of, like, is behind the PC the entire time. So, yeah, I get why people don't want to make Alistair king. And then also in Inquisition, you kind of find out that he's there's a big learning curve to him being king. But, like, this midpoint where you have in the comics here, he really is making hard decisions. He's being a leader. He's actually, you know, making choices for the good or ill of the fate of the world. And he's actually doing all right with them. And, like, so you meet Morrigan's quote-unquote sister, another witch of the wilds named Yavanna, and he actually just murders her because he's just so sick and tired of the lies and of the magic. And because she's offering to do all this stuff for him to help find Merrick at a very high price. And he's like, you know what? Fuck you. Fuck this. And he just murders her.
well, also, that is a great narration as well. But, like, he also blames her, which when he stabbed her, I was a little bit surprised. But then he has a line of dialogue where he also blames her for having taken Merrick. Right, like he sort of connects that action to sort of throwing Ferelden into chaos, and he says it's for justice. And I'm like, you know, it's kind of harsh, but it is in an odd way, like it is a kingly pronunciation in a way, right? Where he's just like, look, I'm the king, and you altered the course of my country by taking my father, so this is what you get. You get a sword in the gut.
And to be quite honest, he's not exactly wrong.
He's
either.
Not. No, it's just he's so decisive that and you talk about, like, in the game he doesn't really have the opportunity to have agency, and so it's nice to just see Alistair be that decisive.
Where he just says, you fucked everything up, so I'm gonna fuck you up. And he really, like, what is this? And I'm looking at the image right now. Is it a great sword? I don't know what he has, but it just right in the middle there.
Yeah.
And then he stares down a dragon and then just looks at me like, what are you going to do? And then just walks away.
That's the best part, right? He's like, what are you going to do? Eat me or some shit? I don't forget what the line is, but he just walks away.
And then this giant we haven't even talked about the high dragons, Jordan. Or no, great dragons, Jordan, because that's different.
Well, that's some badass art. I mean, I'll say that. Some of those panels, some of the splash pages are absolutely brilliant.
So as a quick, like, lore thing, okay, so essentially what the whole plot with, like, why Callan had Merrick had to go see Yavanna, it was that if you read The Stolen Throne, he made a promise to Flemeth. Apparently the promise was go see Yavanna after all this shit would go down. And so he does, because that was the promise he made in exchange for getting his country back. And they use his blood as the blood of Callan had and have some sort of weird dragon properties to awake the great dragons. Now, great dragons are some, like, in the span of dragons, so far the highest we know is high. Great dragons is somewhere above that and have some sort of mystical power. We don't really know what it is. And essentially this comic just says, like, this is a thing that's happening. Alice, and so apparently Merrick was captured by Titus, which we'll maybe get to that in a bit if we have time. And so he wasn't able to complete his purpose. So Yavanna's like, well, I can help you find Merrick if you help me complete Awakening the Great Dragons. And he's like, no, I'm not going to do that. And so it's like that plus the country is kind of reason why he's doing this. And he actually squares off with what we think is a great dragon, even though it isn't confirmed, and just kind of says, no, I'm not having this, and leaves. So we don't know anything other than about great dragons other than like these couple pages. So it's an interesting lore thing, but then they don't do anything with it. So I kind of like, that's all I can say. This is a thing that exists that might come back later. Or maybe not, who knows. So
yeah, no, and I mean, just kind of my last thought on Alistair is the fact that like there's two elements of it that I really like, is that it shows him sort of being more of a king, but more than that, and especially considering the time period of like you said, kind of before the events of Inquisition still, it kind of shows him being more kingly, but to me, it also shows him sort of earning that title, like really earning it, and doing that in a way where he is kind of confronting the flaws of his father in a way, right? Because especially when you look at Merrick, like Merrick really didn't want to be king that much either.
He didn't. No,
he was not really a kingly sort of guy. Like Loghain was really kind of responsible for running a lot of stuff, and so in many ways, Alistair is his father's son. Except he's so much more aware of that, and he's so much more aware of the fact that he doesn't want to be king. And on some level, his journey throughout this entire thing is finding his father, right? Like in his head, he has this idea of like, I'm going to find the great King Merrick. I can bring him back. He can be king again, and then I don't have to do this. And so in some sense, he's being a little selfish, but in some sense, he's being kind of smart. He kind of knows he's not cut out for it, which is something that we've said all the time in our, in our conversations about whether or not Alistair should be king. But yet what this shows with this information, I think it kind of alters my idea of what I want my canon to be, because what this shows is Alistair saying, I'm not really prepared to be king. I should go out and find the great King Merrick and make him king again. And what he's really finding out in many ways is by sort of, again, it's that quintessential archetypal trope of like, you face your father and you realize your father is you. He has the same flaws you do, or rather you have the same flaws he did. And so there's that Merrick telling him like, look, you're probably better at this than I ever was already. That's actually what Alistair went out to find. He didn't go out to find the great King Merrick who could come back and take his place. What he really went out to find was that he is both as capable and perhaps as flawed as his father, but that knowledge and that awareness puts him half a step or one step above where his father was at the same stage. I fucking love that shit. That is character growth. That's actual earned character growth, and it makes me like Alistair even more than I already did. And it honestly makes me reconsider what I sort of consider my personal canon for the Dragon Age trilogy, which was always Alistair stays a warden. And now I'm like, fuck, I think I have to go Alistair as king now.
What's interesting though is that, so this as you may have recognized, this comic only works at a very small amount of world states, but apparently even if you have a warden Alistair, he still goes on this journey. In fact, if you have Alistair as a warden and he goes into the Fade, that Alistair will actually reference this comic very briefly. So like I wonder like how different this story is when like Merrick finds out that his son is a warden still, and then Honora, his Loghain's daughter, is the king or queen. You know, like what differences? How does this? Apparently, this does play out if Alistair is dead. So what happens then? What's going on? So I don't know. They never actually released any blurbs or anything about like what the differences in the story would be depending on certain people's fates. But I've always wondered like how would this play out under different world states?
You know, that's interesting you mentioned that, because I had a similar. I didn't know that exactly, but it's interesting because as I was reading it, especially in the Silent Grove, like towards the beginning, I was like, really, like the King of Ferelden just kind of gets to go off on his own, like without like a whole attaché of like guards or something like that. And I actually thought for a second, like, well, maybe it's meant so that you could like kind of ignore / alter a line of dialogue or two in your mind and have it play out in different world states.
I mean, to be fair, the whole calling is essentially that thing of the King of Ferelden sneaks out to go have some fun in the deep roads.
Well, that is true. But at least he has Logain and Grey Wardens with him. I mean, at least that.
Well, Logain was not with him. It was just Grey Wardens.
He has Grey Wardens at least. He's got something. If you're gonna go into the deep roads, at least you've got Grey Wardens.
Well, I mean, most of them don't survive, so I don't know how good it was.
Yeah. Well, that's why no one's ever gotten to do that plan again.
Yeah, really. And then Alistair's born because of that. But anyway, we're kind of running short on time. Is there something else you wanted to touch on?
I mean, just kind of while we're adjacent to this topic generally, Merrick, right? I mean, it is as we said at the beginning, it is the completion of his story. I mean, I don't know, maybe we've already kind of said everything about that, but just him getting to sort of meet his son in this adult form and see him, and he says a very fatherly thing, which is just knowing that the kingdom's in good hands and that you've grown up and done all this stuff, that's enough. I think that was it was, as someone who again really enjoyed Stone Throne and the Calling, I thought that was nice to kind of say goodbye to Merrick in that way.
Yeah, so not that I disagree, but I also feel kind of sad about it, because this guy has had just a rough life for them. Yeah, he was king or whatever, but you always saw all the hardships. Pretty much every woman he's ever loved has died horribly in some sense, minus Fiona. And they couldn't be together because of reasons. So it's just kind of a sad existence that this poor guy had, with such a great legacy and such tragedy in this guy's life, and it ends as a withered husk and when he was a prisoner, it just really sucks. You just feel sad about it.
It's a powerful panel when Varric first walks in and sees him sort of attached to that, I can't remember, the Magrellan?
Yeah, something like that.
That device or whatever it is. He's got all the tubes or wires or whatever it is, and he's practically a husk, and you're like, oh boy, that's rough.
Yeah, and so this isn't an experience I've had, but this is an experience that my mother has had with her mother. But at pretty much at the end of it, so they're all in the Fade. Merrick's in the Fade. He's healthy, kind of old man Merrick, and he's doing whatever. And then they come back into reality, and then Merrick is still husk and dying, and he's not going to live without this machine. It really is just kind of, I don't think allegory is the right word I'm looking for, but it's almost kind of if you have a parent who's dying and they're not going to live without life support, are you going to pull the plug? Are you not? It's a very hard decision for you. Because what if they do come back? What if we can bring them back and they'll be okay and they can lead the family again? Or they probably won't, And Alistair makes a decision to quote unquote pull the plug, and he kills his father for the benefit of his father, because he otherwise would just be living as a husk. And it was a very hard decision for him. And it's something I think is even questioned at the very end of the comic. Was that the right thing to do? And they go, I don't know.
You're so right, and I wouldn't even just say that it's an allusion to that. I think it's literally meant to be that.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting, right? The line from Varric, and I've got it pulled up here, is it's a terrible thing to live as a part of someone else's story. You need to finish this, or the story will never end. And then in the next page, it's Alistair getting ready to destroy the machine, saying, "I thought I needed Merrick. He needed me." That is exactly what that moment is supposed to be, and I'll juxtapose it with something slightly different, where in The Last Jedi in Star Wars, Kylo Ren has got this whole thing about let go of the past, kill it if you have to. He's talking to Rey about not needing to be part of a legacy. Kylo Ren basically hates his father, he hates his uncle, he hates the fact that he's supposed to be this great Jedi of this great lineage, because he sort of resents it, right? He wants to be known for his own exploits, etc. That's sort of a negative take on that idea of ending your parents' story, so to speak, where I think there's a positive version of that, where when Varric says, you don't want to live as someone else's story, it's time for this to end. He's basically saying it's time for this to really be your story, the story of Alistair the King, not just Alistair, son of Merrick. The reason why I view that in such a positive context is because based on what we just saw, that's exactly what Merrick would have wanted.
Yeah.
Right. That's the positive version of that story, where that's what a good father, mother, parents, that's what they want for their kids, is to sort of take those steps, to use them as a launching pad to be their own person and to have their own story. And so that is sort of the ultimate it's rough because he's letting go of his parent. That's obviously a painful thing to do, but it is such a positive take on that because it's exactly what his father would have wanted for him.
Mm-hmm. And it's also like even more bittersweet because this is really the only interaction these two have ever had, other than like when he was an infant. Like Alistair doesn't remember that. So like these are the only memories that Alistair's going to have of his father, and I think that despite how violent and they are and whatnot, I think they're going to be at least some positive ones in the end, and I think it's a nice little bow onto the stories of the both of them. And now if we could just get one with Fiona Bioware.
Oh, yeah. Come on, man. Let's go.
Can we at least have them have 1 year of happiness before Fiona or Alistair croaks? I would be very pleased. Thank you. Oh, God. So yeah,
we're at about an hour. I promised I'll make it quick because I don't have too many thoughts to say, but just on the technical aspects of the comic. It is, and I'm going to try and say this gently, it is actually for me slightly one of the weaker elements of it. I liked the art. I did not love the art. I think it's good. It's not necessarily great. There were some pages that I really, really enjoyed. Like I said, some of the dragons. There's this one great splash page. I think it's Until We Sleep when they're sort of coming into the base. I thought it was a great splash page. There's a couple of panels that I said were really moving. So overall, I thought the art was good, but there was some stuff. Some of the way that the panels are laid out, like I'm a real stickler for that as part of because there should be a natural flow to it. And if I catch myself a couple of times having gone in the wrong order, I don't take that on as myself, because if you're reading a very well laid out comic, you basically never do that.
If I may ask, is the one you're talking about, is that the one where Isabel's giving her backstory? Because that one was very messy for me.
There's a couple of those. Yep.
Yeah, and that's they try to do this weird dreamy thing, and I think it looks nice, but yeah, you definitely. I think I read that one a couple times. To be like, what am I? What?
Yeah, if I go out of order, maybe once or twice, I go, oh, I'm just being a dummy. But if it happens more than that, I go, no, it's not me. Right? It's the way the panels are laid out. I kind of took a little bit of issue with that. Holy shit, word balloons! There's a lot of them, and they do the thing where they've got one person's word balloon and then the other one kind of nests inside of it, which is common. You see that in a bunch of comics, but they do it a lot here, and a lot of them are very cramped together and they're long. So it'll nest 2 or 3 or 4 times. And when you have a word balloon string that's that long, you kind of have to trace it down to the character first and then go back and start reading it. So just kind of little things like that I wasn't a fan of. The art style overall, I think, is solid, and I think the characters are good. There are just small moments where maybe it feels a little bit generic. I don't know if I'm being just too hard on it, but I would give the art a 6 or a 7 out of 10, whereas the overall experience is probably an 8 or a 9 for me.
So I would rate the art higher than that, but I think I also know where the rest of these Dragon Age comics are going. I think this is probably the best art in the series. I will say I do really like the art in the newer Darkhorse comics. There's a lot of little art designs. I go, what? Why is it the elves having the goat eyes? I don't know why they do that still. And Canary have these bumpy shoulders for some reason. There's just a lot of confusing things for me. Where the art here, the only thing that confuses me is just everyone has gym day, everyone's fucking ripped.
Yes.
But that's a comic thing to me. To me, that's just a medium thing.
Okay. So one other thing on that though, because I will give them license to make people ripped, but there are a couple of scenes, and again, it seems like a small thing, but Varric's biceps are getting way bigger and then smaller depending on some of the I get that that's a small thing, but from an anatomy standpoint, make his size consistent. He looks way more jacked in certain scenes.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I would think the same thing for Alistair too. Here's the thing though, I can forgive it. So I guess I would rate the art higher at a 7 or 8. Or maybe I think I'll go with an 8. Just because I think it gets the point across. I didn't find it distracting. And it told the story well enough. And there are a lot of cool art moments. The one where Titus, who we have not even talked about because he does not fucking matter, who is the villain, where he's melting Canary, and that looked really cool. So, like, there's little art moments like that. And, like, the boats. The boats look really nice. They look like fucking boats. Where sometimes I feel like I read a comic, like, is that supposed to be I don't know what I'm looking at. Like, maybe the people are okay, but, like, some of the other props are just, what the hell?
Oh, yeah. Oh, talking about art and kind of talking about Titus, the one splash where it shows his vision of like the dragons on the spires and all this different stuff, that was fucking badass. I'm like, if we don't get something like that or inspired by that visually as a fade section in DA4, I'll be a little disappointed because I thought visually that looked fucking awesome.
Yeah, so I think the art here, I think, does service to the comic, and I think overall is a very positive thing about it. So I know you're kind of rating it low based on certain panels, but like I think it actually does great service to the story. Like I was not distracted by it. I think it actually told more in the story, where like in the newer comics, I have been distracted by a couple bits of it. Not to say that it's necessarily bad. Wait till we fucking get to the IDW comics, guys.
Ooh,
that's gonna be a fucking riot.
Oh boy, because yeah, if you're saying this is the high point for the art, I'm not saying that because then I don't think it's bad or anything. I think it is actually good and it's really good in some spaces. But if this is the high point of what we've seen so far for Dragon Age comics as far as art, I'll have more to say.
Yeah, I don't. Here's the thing. I haven't said anything about Mage Killer yet. I don't remember what Mage Killer looked like. I don't remember Mage. So maybe Mage Killer artwork was really good, but I don't remember it. IDW is just the fucking pits, and then the new ones are all right. I got the hiccups. I'm sorry.
Well, one other thing I do also want to say about the art, I just appreciate the fact that it's Dragon Age where like we can cut people's heads off and shit again. Like,
oh yeah, no, it's super violent.
It's gory. There's a great scene where they're rushing in right towards the end to fight Titus, and Alistair is like cutting off a demon's head, like just straight up cutting his head off. And the one panel, which I thought was legitimately badass, was where Varric cuts off Titus's hand and head at the same time. That's an awesome fucking panel. So.
Something I thought was really neat, because I'm more in the magic-y violence side, I guess, but kind of early on, again, a villain we didn't talk about because in the end they're just a plot and device and they don't matter that much. But they kill someone prematurely, and Ivana's like, I mean, you killed him, but we kind of needed his information. So she brings him back from the dead to like talk to his spirit very briefly. And while she's doing that, his body is like disintegrating. It was kind of neat. So I'm trying to flip back to that page again.
No, I remember it. It's so good. And I'm trying to remember, this would have come out before The Witcher 3. And so Yennefer does the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm thinking, did Yennefer do that in one of the books? Like, who got that from who? I'm not saying they got it from there or whatever, but it reminded me of that. It's very similar to something that Yennefer does in Witcher 3. And I can't remember if that's in one of the stories or the books. But yeah, it was a great scene.
Yeah. Like, I'm looking at the page right now. Like, a part of the rituals, she stabs her staff through his eye socket. And then, like, is like having him talk, and he barely can. She's choke holding him. And eventually he says what he needs to do, but his, like, skin is burning off and his eye is missing, and he turns into a skull. Like, it's
badass.
Really intense.
It's fucking metal.
See, like, I'm not exactly, like, pro super violent, but, like, in a case like this where it makes sense, and it's not violent just to be violent. It, like, a ritual where you bring someone from the dead and have to stab through their eyeball. That kind of makes sense in a weird way. I'm okay with this. And I would love more more like this in the game.
It's his brain USB port, don't you know?
That's what the eyes are. The eyes are the window to the soul. They're just the brain USB port. So, and I guess her knife or the knife at the end of her staff is the USB dongle.
100%. That's the USB 3.0.
Yeah, there you go.
Look, just overall, I came into this totally just like, I'll just see what these are about. I think I'm really glad that I started with this one and not the IDW ones, because I figured maybe I should start with the good ones if I can.
Yeah, because originally I had pitched, like, let's start with the IDWs and work our way up. But no, you want to go the good and go our way down. So.
But honestly, like, I'm so glad I started with these. I didn't just like it. I think I loved it. And it's so cool to me because we were just talking about on the last episode, we've gone a whole long time without any new content for Dragon Age. I know the newest comic is sort of current right now. The new issue rather just came out.
Blue Wraith came out a little under a week from when we were recording this.
Couple weeks. Are you going to do any sort of recast? I saw Jack over at Jackdaw did.
Yeah, so I'm going to wait till they all come out. So like it's January, February, March. Last one comes out in March. In March, I'm just going to make one. So.
Ooh, I'll see if I can catch up and maybe I can read it with everyone else when I read everything else.
I think I will say as a quick review of that though, for people who want to know my quick thoughts, like so far I think the first issue of Blue Wraith is the strongest first issue of the whole series that Christina Weir and now I can't remember his name Nunzio De Philippis have done so far. So I think that it has the strongest opening. We'll see where it goes. But no, I'm excited for it. Now, if you're reading it just to see Fenris is in the beginning and a little bit at the end, but it's really not about Fenris, which I don't mind at all. Because like it's less fan service, more like this is the story we're telling. Also, here's Fenris. So, and he makes sense to why he's there. At least so far. Maybe later on, it's like, what the fuck's going on? So who knows? Anyway, but yeah.
No, like I said, I'm so glad I got this, and you know, we were talking about, it's been a year without new Dragon Age content, and I'm like totally taking part in that conversation without copying to the fact that like I haven't gone through all the Dragon Age content. Like now for Mass Effect, I've tapped that thing. You know what I mean?
That's
like
true.
There's nothing left for me on Mass Effect. Not fucking mobile games, nothing. You know what I mean? Like I've gone through everything. Now, but for this, I was like, oh shit, this is a major piece of Dragon Age story, and I'm so glad I've gotten to jump on board with everybody else now.
Now, one thing, so two points on that. I haven't actually read any of the Mass Effect comics, so that's something we'll have to do later. You'll have to give me a little quick guide of what to read. And we can talk about that. There's nothing
this good, unfortunately.
Oh, really?
Nope.
Oh, man. Well,
they're okay, but there's nothing that's this good. This was just why I was so surprised, honestly.
And so something else you were saying, when we were starting, I don't think this actually happened in the podcast. This might have happened on stream. I can't remember. But when we were talking about doing this, and I mentioned that Alexander Freed had written these, I had no idea who that was. But you did. Because apparently he did some like really good Star Wars comics or something.
He's also a novelist. He actually has written a couple of Star Wars novels that are part of the new canon. I actually have one on my shelf, which it was a gift, and I'm so eager to jump into it. But apparently he's written some badass Star Wars novels as well. What I knew Alexander Freed from is he is one of the main writers on Star Wars: The Old Republic. So he wrote, let's see, a couple of the probably the Sith Warrior, if I'm not mistaken, storyline. He's probably the main writer for that. And he might have been co-writer with Drew Karpyshyn on the Jedi Knight. I might be getting that mixed up. But he definitely wrote some of the Old Republic prequel comics. Most of which are not good at all, unfortunately, except for his. And I read all of them, and I was like, God, these are really not very good. And then when I got to his, I was like, a couple of pages in, I was like, oh, this person knows how to write. And I had the same feeling with the Dragon Age comics, where I'm like, this dude really knows how to write comics, which is it's a great feeling. It's a comfortable feeling to know that you're in competent hands.
Now, here's something. Because you had just finished reading these, and I was like, it's been like a year. So I just watched and read my notes and on the videos I did and stuff like that. And as I was rewatching the video that I did on it, which, yes, apparently I am that person. I didn't know who Alexander Freed was. And so I just kind of Googled his name and then just kind of like took a screenshot of what popped up of things that he had written on. And I completely forgot about this until now. He's also done Anthem comics, Jordan.
Oh, fantastic!
With Mac Walters, so
fuck yeah, I would totally read those.
Maybe we should check out the Anthem comic. I know nothing about them.
Hell yes, because I think Mac Walters also did a really good job on the novel that he worked on, which was really quite nice. He co-wrote that one with N.K. Jemisin, right? Am I getting those authors?
I don't know.
Yes, okay, no, that's right. It was Initiation, which they both wrote, which was. Very good. Obviously, N.K. Jemisin, fantastic, well-known science fiction author. But I thought if I understand correctly how they divvied that up, I think I know what Mac's contributions were, and it was also quite good. So yeah, Mac Walters and Alexander Freed, sign me the fuck up. I gotta find those.
Yeah, I see. I guess my only worry about the Anthem comics is like I literally know nothing about them, and like who's gonna be the character? Like, what is this about? So
we gotta do one though. That'll be fun.
From what I'm seeing on Google, because I did a quick Google search, I think there's only 3 issues. I'm not quite sure. Yeah, there is a looks like a bundle of them all for like $8.99 if you buy it on the Kindle, which I would probably do. So yeah, I'm trying to see if like I'm like flipping through some pages here, and I do not recognize anybody. So I wonder if they just made their own story. Huh.
I mean, that might be the best, honestly.
Yeah. Anyway, well, we're still recording.
Oh, okay. I promise this is the last one. This is kind of a long episode, but I feel like these comics are worth it. Last thing I had a kind of a question on.
Yeah.
Because I love this kind of shit, just generally in comic books. Last panel, Until We Sleep.
Yeah.
Is that a thing? When I saw it immediately, I was like, oh, that's cool. Until We Sleep. That's a great line. The title, blah, blah, blah. The end. And I'm looking at it going, is that just a nothing panel, or is that panel supposed to mean something? It should be described for people what that panel is.
Okay, so the very last pattern with the shattered stuff in it, that's what you're talking about?
With a little bit of blood.
Yeah, so I took that as the shattered remains of the Magellan.
But is that Merrick's... So that is definitely that, but is that Merrick's blood, and is that... I mean, if his blood was so important or powerful, or that's what Titus wanted, does that mean like somebody could come and like scoop and get a little vial of it and like do something with it?
Maybe. So, well, here's the thing. When you look at Titus had Merrick's blood. Like, he had a whole fucking barrel of Merrick's blood.
Yeah.
Like, that orb was full of it. So, like, I don't know. I will say the way it's drawn and how I remember the comics, Merrick is being held underground somewhere. I don't think there was any windows, but it looks like there is some light shining on these shattered remains with the blood on it and whatnot. You can't see any shadows. It didn't look like anyone's coming in or anything. But yeah, I guess you could say that someone came in there, stole some shards, and has a bit of Merrick's blood, but I don't think it'd be anything significant, you know? Although who knows with this game, Liliana came back from the dead, who fucking like anything could fucking happen. But I just never really took it as foreboding. I just took it more as a reference to like Until We Sleep, like Merrick.
That was his end. Yeah, that's his. That's it for Merrick. Yeah, I mean, again, I think I was mostly on the side of like, yeah, it's probably nothing. But you know, if there's some folks out there that want to stretch their theory crafting, there you go.
Yeah, I guess that would be the place to do it. Also, I've always thought that like the so there's like one big piece that has like a blood drip on it, but like the blood drip almost looks like it's a vent of some sort. Like there's some irregularities in the glass, but like that could just be some weird artist thing. Like that could be anything. So like I just kind of said I didn't really give it much thought, to be honest. But who knows? Maybe I'm wrong.
Dot.
Yeah. Dot. Oh, actually, sorry. No, I'm looking. I'm paging through, and there are windows in the underground layer where Merrick was. So maybe it's just light shining from that. Okay. Anyway,
this was a blast. We'll do more. I will be continuing to catch up on the rest of the comics, and then whenever I've done that, we'll probably do some more of these comic retrospects.
Indeed. All right. Well, Jordan, where can they find you?
The folks can find me at the Exalted March on YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. And Caitie, where can the folks find you?
They can find me on YouTube and Twitter as Ghildirthalen. And with that, everybody, go read these comics. Darkhorse.